Welcome. Let's see. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I know it's 5 o'clock on Thursday, so very much appreciate. This is a very important market, and there's a lot of great work happening there, so it's wonderful that we're able to do this session. It's my great pleasure to introduce the Head of Climate Division of the Ministry of Environment of Morocco, Ms. Wafa Bouchouata, who will be making opening remarks before we get started with the rest of the discussion. Ms. Bouchouata, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. Donc, tout d'abord, je tiens à remercier l'INDCP pour cette louable initiative et pour nous avoir associés donc, à cet événement très important. J'exprime par ailleurs le regret de Monsieur le Directeur, Point focal national, de ne pas être parmi nous pour un agenda très chargé et puis pour une demande de dernière minute. Mesdames et messieurs, c'est avec un immense plaisir donc, qu'on inaugure cet événement dédié et portant sur les investissements climatiques qui est organisé à l'occasion de la COP29, cet événement annuel très important et qui requiert donc, beaucoup d'attentes, surtout de la part des pays très vulnérables comme le nôtre. Je tiens à exprimer également ma gratitude à la NDCP pour son soutien continu au Royaume du Maroc, ainsi qu'à tous les partenaires ici présents. Donc, l'engagement de la NDCP témoigne de la priorité qu'elle accorde collectivement à la mobilisation des financements nécessaires et puis à l'assistance technique aussi à tous les partenaires. Notre réunion d'aujourd'hui vient à point nommé dans un contexte mondial très important. Donc, nous nous réunissons donc dans un contexte où les impacts des changements climatiques ont déjà vient donc de nous rappeler encore une fois donc les effets très néfastes et la nécessité de se mobiliser. Le Maroc, comme d'autres pays de l'Afrique, est très vulnérable. Il l'a su très tôt et il s'est engagé très tôt. C'est pourquoi le Royaume du Maroc, sous les orientations de Sa Majesté le Roi, que Dieu l'assiste, a fait du renforcement de la résilience une priorité nationale. Déjà, notre politique de barrage, notre savoir-faire ancestral, l'Irtara, un prix Hassan II de l'environnement qui a été instauré en 1980, avant même la signature des 3 conventions de Rio. C'est pour dire que le Maroc, pour lui, la nature, l'environnement, c'est une culture déjà ancrée dans notre quotidien. Les ambitions alignées avec les objectifs de l'accord de Paris, avec les objectifs du développement durable. Donc le Maroc, il s'est engagé très tôt. On était le premier pays à organiser la COP7 en 2001 à Marrakech. À cette occasion, on a présenté notre première communication nationale. Par la suite, on a organisé la COP22 Marrakech, juste après l'entrée en vigueur de l'accord de Paris. Et puis après, le Maroc a élaboré 4 communications nationales, 3 rapports biennaux. Nous sommes aujourd'hui en train de consolider le rapport de la 5e communication nationale et le premier rapport de la transparence renforcée. Un inventaire avec un système national d'inventaire. C'est vrai que ce système a connu quelques défis. On est en train de corriger la trajectoire. Chemin faisant, on peut toujours apprendre donc, et améliorer nos performances. Une commission nationale changement climatique, diversité biologique, parce que le cadre gouvernance, c'est très important. On ne peut pas prétendre être pionnier en matière, on se félicite déjà. Hier, on a eu le 8e classement, donc on est dans le top 10 des performances du changement climatique, mais ça ne pousse que pour faire mieux et puis pour rectifier davantage et tirer des leçons de ce qui s'est passé. On a élaboré également une stratégie nationale bas carbone. La première qualitative, elle a été élaborée et soumise en 2021 et on est sur le point de soumettre la stratégie nationale bas carbone long terme quantitative, excusez-moi. Donc avec 98 mesures dans les 7 secteurs et avec donc 6 plans sectoriels de décarbonation. Aujourd'hui, le Maroc dispose, nos institutions, nos secteurs, chacun a réalisé, on a réalisé avec lui, pour lui, donc des plans. Ce sont des plans d'action de décarbonation. Donc pour le transport, pour l'agriculture et la foresterie, pour l'énergie, pour le bâtiment, pour l'industrie, etc. Donc nous savons où nous sommes, nous savons où on peut aller. Maintenant, tout ça, ça requiert des financements. Et c'est pour cela qu'on profite de nos partenaires. Et cette requête-là vient, donc, elle a été déposée par le Maroc à la NDCP. Un projet de portefeuille d'investissement CDN 3.0. Et le timing est très important parce que le Maroc, comme tous les autres pays, il doit soumettre sa contribution nationale déterminée. Je ne voulais pas faire les abréviations. Sa contribution, c'est un package d'engagement, c'est un portefeuille de projets et d'adaptation et d'atténuation. Donc, ça s'appelle une CDN ou une contribution nationale déterminée. Et cet exercice-là, ce portefeuille d'investissement que nous avons lancé en octobre et auquel ont pris part la majorité toutes les institutions gouvernementales, en tout cas, le secteur financier aussi. On a quelques chercheurs, je vois devant moi les chercheurs. On a la société civile qui est très intéressée, qui suit de près ce que nous faisons. Donc, tous les partenaires sont là pour réussir donc, ce programme-là. Donc, ce portefeuille, il est lancé avec l'appui de la NDCP, avec l'appui du programme des Nations Unies pour l'environnement et le cabinet international Cross Boundary. Donc, ce programme vise à transformer nos ambitions climatiques en actions concrètes. Mais ces actions, une fois inscrites, une fois identifiées, chercher le financement. Et c'est là la force de ce projet-là. Donc, en structurant et en priorisant les projets climatiques à travers une checklist, donc il y a eu des réunions avec les partenaires, un atelier de lancement, d'explication, et donc nos partenaires, ils ont reçu la checklist, et puis après, il y a une phase pendant laquelle ils peuvent échanger avec les experts pour renseigner cette checklist. Il y aura un second round après, je crois, d'ici vers le 15. En tout cas, on a un planning bien ficelé pour ne pas laisser les gens travailler eux tout seuls. Ils sont en train de renseigner, ils peuvent contacter les experts à chaque moment qu'ils veulent. Mais sinon, il y a un rendez-vous avec tous les partenaires, avec nos experts pour justement avoir à mi-chemin où nous en sommes et là où c'est un peu compliqué parce que la checklist de 6 pages, c'est une checklist extraordinaire et nous permet d'anticiper les exigences des bailleurs de fonds. Souvent, on demande à nos partenaires donc de soumettre ils soumettent des demandes, des fiches conceptuelles projets. Mais quand elle est préparée sur une bonne base, une checklist innovante, c'est garanti d'avance que les critères sont là. Tout ce que veut le bailleur de fonds sont là. Donc ça va faciliter aussi le travail de cross-boundary. Vous me corrigez si je dis quelque chose qui n'est pas très clair. En structurant, en priorisant les projets avec un outil qui va permettre de déverrouiller le capital. La particularité, moi j'ai essayé de chercher la particularité de cet exercice. Alors, une checklist qui cadre tous les éléments demandés. Les efforts de nos institutions seront faits par nos institutions et l'appui d'expertise que j'ai dit. La mise en relation de porteurs de projets et d'investissement. Ça, c'est très important. Souvent, on a des fiches conceptuelles, on a des projets qui sont là, mais il n'y a pas de bailleurs de fonds. On n'arrive pas à mobiliser l'investissement qu'il faut. Le renforcement de l'expertise nationale, ça aussi, c'est très important. Quand on a de l'expertise nationale conjuguée à l'expertise internationale, on remonte un peu et puis on améliore notre manière de voir, de faire et de garantir un résultat. Un exercice qui est préparation de la CDN. C'est très important, ça va nous permettre de l'autre côté, quand on va commencer l'exercice qui va commencer très bientôt, à définir les projets que nous allons inscrire dans la CDN aussi, ça va aider donc les partenaires qui ont déjà travaillé avec l'INDCP, le PNU et Cross Boundary, de bien définir d'autres projets et de chercher, parce qu'ils sont en train de creuser, de chercher les projets. Mais les projets qui trouvent des financements, ce sont les projets innovants, ce sont les projets qui ont un impact, ce sont les projets qui peuvent être réplicables. Donc, et ce sont des projets modèles. Par exemple, nous, aujourd'hui, on vit un stress hydrique qui est sans précédent. Et donc, les projets de dessalement de l'eau, il faut chercher la meilleure technologie qu'il faut, etc., pour réduire les coûts. Et ce sont des projets qui apparaissent aussi bien dans la stratégie nationale bas carbone que dans notre CDN. Je dirais aussi les projets de l'hydrogène vert, bien qu'on est dans les premières phases, mais ce sont des projets qui peuvent trouver des investissements ou qui peuvent préparer la recherche scientifique, par exemple, etc., pour chercher les meilleures technologies. Donc, cette initiative innovante nous interpelle à repenser et à diversifier les approches. Donc, cela inclut le développement de mécanismes financiers novateurs tels que les garanties vertes, les partenariats publics-privés, les obligations vertes, ainsi que la mise en place d'incitations fiscales pour stimuler les investissements. Je profite de cette occasion pour vous informer que le ministère des Finances du Maroc fait de l'excellent travail. Ils ont créé une unité climat et ils sont aujourd'hui une cinquantaine, je crois, de personnes qui travaillent sur le sujet et qui préparent le Maroc à la phase future pour passer à des projets nouvelle génération pour pouvoir permettre au Maroc de faire de ces défis climatiques des opportunités. Ces solutions doivent donc s'accompagner d'un cadre institutionnel et légal robuste et d'une coopération renforcée. En témoigne l'exercice d'aujourd'hui. Donc, ce sont des solutions inspirantes et je vous laisse donc avec les autres panélistes pour ces solutions-là. Merci beaucoup.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been really great to hear about all the progress that Morocco has made, and thank you very much for also praising the efforts of Mohammed, Amin, and the entire team at the NDC partnership. We look forward to working more with you all and also engaging with the private sector. That's the work that I lead at the NDC partnership. To mobilize the finance with the support of our public sector partners to really help the country achieve the objectives. We will proceed with the presentation by two team members that have been also at forefront of this effort. We're going to go to Ms. Krikiti, who has been leading this work on behalf of Cross Boundary. She will give us a short presentation about the work, followed by the presentation by Riyad Ballaghi, who is a national consultant at UNEP. And then perhaps after those presentations, we will have a discussion with Eric Krypton, who is here, who is the Director of Business Services at CDPQ, which is Quebec's pension fund. This is one of the largest international investors in the world. And this is the type of institutional capital that we are trying to attract to developing countries. These are the billions and trillions that are needed to, and we need to have a frank discussion about how we can do that. What are the expectations also from the private sector side? And Eric will also speak about some of the innovative solutions and the ways that they're thinking about this. So we will do that after those two presentations. And I think if anybody has any questions, please feel free to raise them during the presentations. Thank you. Ms. Krikiti, we will turn to you now. I know you're online, and also Riyad is online.
Great. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and we can see you. Wonderful.
Okay, great. Bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Kitty. Je suis le chef de l'équipe transition énergétique chez Cross Boundary. Désolée, mon français est un peu rouillé, donc je vais continuer en anglais pour le reste de cette présentation. Merci beaucoup. So just to introduce the NDC partnership program that we've been conducting in partnership with the government of Morocco, if we can please move to the next slide. Great. So the partnership program is focused on, as the ministry has mentioned, mobilizing capital into high priority NDC sectors within each country. Thank you very much to the NDC team for really championing this project. It's a pilot project focused on 6 different pilot countries. You can see the countries at the bottom. This includes, of course, our work with Morocco, but is also being piloted in Laos, Vietnam, Nigeria, Uganda, as well as Colombia. The main goal for this project is to mobilize capital into NDC priorities. And this is obviously different sectors that are a focus for different countries. We've already touched on some of the high priority sectors in Morocco. This includes the agriculture sector, the energy sector, the water sector, waste management, industrial decarbonization. And the goal is going to be to identify projects across these different sectors and to mobilize capital into them. The project has 5 different steps, and we are now very much in step 3 of the project. So this started off with identifying the main NDC priority sectors. We also know that the government is going through a process of updating and refreshing this in partnership with GIZ. But we do think that these will stay very much core to the sectors that we've mentioned here. The second step was a kickoff workshop that happened in October, where we launched this program. And now we are working with several different project proponents that have climate projects that are aligned to these sectors to identify the projects and fill out the checklist, which includes all of the information that we believe investors require to decide whether the project is of interest to them or not. And this will be followed by a matchmaking session planned for January of next year, and ideally mobilizing capital into the high priority sectors. So this is just to give you an initial overview of what the priorities are for the country. If we can move to the next slide. One of the core objectives of the platform is to also create connectivity between the different stakeholders that are relevant in Morocco to be able to achieve these outcomes. And so as part of this process, we are engaging with the 4 key stakeholders. In our opinion, this includes the people that are developing projects, including companies, startups, various other entities that are seeking the funding. Of course, very importantly, this includes the people providing the funding, so commercial banks, private equity, infrastructure funds, including the likes of CDPQ, as well as other providers of capital, both domestic, regional, as well as international, ecosystem enablers like the critical NGOs that are also operating in the space, and of course, most importantly, the government entities, because some of these projects are not just private sector led, but a lot of the important projects are also led by the government and the public sector as well. So really bringing all these important stakeholders together under this platform and making sure that there is strong connectivity between them. Next slide, please. So we are in step 3 of this project. So as I mentioned earlier, the project proponents, so these are the entities that have projects to develop that are seeking the funding, are in the process of completing what we call the NDC pilot checklist. So this is a form, detailed form that has been developed in discussion with investors to try and standardize the information that's collected and create the minimum amount of information that we believe investors will need to decide whether projects are of interest to them. We know that this might be the first time for some of these projects to fill something like this. So in addition to giving them the standardized format, there is also some ongoing support that will be provided to the companies. So we will be hosting a series of webinars, the first one starting next week on the 26th of November, followed by another one in early December, to be able to answer any questions that the developers or other project proponents might have, to make sure that they have all the information that they need to be able to fill out this information in a proper way. Alongside that, there's also frequently asked questions to answer any queries that people may have. And we're bringing all this knowledge together from all the other pilot countries as well. So bringing some consistency across the 5 other geographies that they're working on to make this project and process as efficient as possible. Next slide, please. So who are we excited to work with, and what are the requirements for projects to be able to participate in this platform? Of course, Morocco has very high ambitions and goals for what needs to happen in the next few years to be able to achieve the NDCs. And so just to try and mobilize as much capital and have as much impact as we can, we are trying to create some minimum requirements for projects that can qualify for this support. The first is that the project has to align with Morocco's NDCs. We already mentioned some of the high priority sectors. This may get updated slightly, but is expected to largely remain the same. The second is that there has to be some progress in the project. So this cannot be just concept stage. We require at least things like pre-feasibility to know that these projects are at least a little bit advanced and have the likelihood of achieving outcomes in the short timeline given the urgency of the climate crisis. The third is that the funding that they're seeking is in the next 12 to 18 months. So it does need to be near term. We know that they might be in phases, some of which may be nearer term, some longer term, but there needs to be at least some expected funding in the next 12 to 18 months. We also want to target some level of scale, again, given the amount of funding gap that we know exists in the country. And so projects have to require at least 500,000 of funding that they're looking for to be able to achieve that scale. And finally, they need to be willing to collaborate very closely with the government, with NDC, with UNEP, and all the other players that are helping really launch this platform. It will take some effort, but we are, the goal of this is to try and be able to match high quality projects with high quality investors as well. Next slide, please. In terms of what is expected to come once the checklists are completed and once we've collected all the projects. So the first thing we'll be doing is working together with the government and the other stakeholders that I mentioned to review all the projects that exist, that have been submitted, and to come up with a short list of high priority projects that meet certain requirements. So there is almost a scoring sheet that we're in the process of finalizing that meet the government's priorities, objectives, high impact, so that we are really able to rank these projects depending on how many come through, and then select the highest quality ones to be able to benefit from this matchmaking process. After that, they will be connected with investors. So we'll be creating a deal book that will be shared with investors. So if you are an investor in the room, we highly encourage you to also participate because you will be getting this information as part of this process. And then having one-on-one in-person discussions on January 15th. So this is the date that is planned in next year. So we're very excited to get to that phase very soon. Next slide, please. And through this process, just to come back to the original goal, the main goal is really connecting climate projects with the investors, reducing the amount of friction that exists to be able to mobilize capital at the right scale, at the right speed, and help the government really achieve its ambitious targets. The government has already put in place a lot of great policies, a lot of great initiatives. So this is really to supplement that and really accelerate the amount of money flowing into the country for the great objectives that have already been set up. And I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Rikiti. I think we're going to go and start our panel discussion. So I invite Eric Krypton, please, to join us here in person from CDPQ. We have Riyad Balaghi from UNEP online, so he will come up shortly on video. And we also have here Mr. Shajiri, who is the representative of the domestic private sector on behalf of a local fertilizer company, to share his also perspectives on behalf of the domestic private sector. So I'm gonna start kind of with the first question to all of you, and if you could just spend a couple of minutes or so in responding, that would be great. Maybe we start first with you, Mr. Shajiri, as a representative of the domestic private sector. There is a huge business opportunity here, right? That is also will help countries to achieve their NDC targets. And in identifying that business opportunity and really realizing that business opportunity, how you as a domestic private sector are looking at this, and what are some of the perhaps challenges you also see, if you could share that with us, please.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you very much for inviting us to this forum, so at least we can express or to be the voice of the Moroccan companies, especially that you're kicking off this project here in Morocco. Okay, maybe the most important challenges in Morocco about such project is the awareness of all involved parties to push towards such projects. So maybe a sort of culture. Government and other entities involved, they should educate more frequently about business opportunities that can be done in Climat. It's not anymore a matter of being profitable. It has been proved before that we can still do projects that protect the environment, and they can be, and we can still make money, which is very important. So the other thing is, beside the awareness, I think as well from the financing side, I know that the government of Morocco has done a lot, maybe for the big scale projects. As you know, maybe we've been building a very big solar project, wind project, and I remember back in 2016 we had what used to be the biggest solar project in Morocco, nor was it. Now, I think the government and the policymakers, they should focus more on small companies. Small companies, they can do a lot, developing projects and businesses that protect the environment. And maybe one of the case, I will tell, the case is our case. So it's a very small company, startup company. I believe it's even smaller than you may think. We started back in 2019. It's a slag management company, which we recycle the waste from the steel mills companies. So the story started when we went the first time to visit the stockyard when where the mill company was stocking this waste. And we were frankly very surprised to see there is a sort of green layer on the slag. So we asked ourselves, how come this green matter was growing on the slag? So this is how the project started. We got in touch with Professor Udra. We explained this. We gave him the samples, and here we go. We started our project. But before getting in touch with Professor Udra, frankly, it was very hard because we went around asking the steel mill companies whether they are interested in doing research and development on this. Frankly, they have dismissed our requests. So maybe this is one of the issues that we need to tackle. Even the big industrial companies, they should be aware that they should go toward developing and helping SMEs, maybe doing sort of collaboration towards such project. So it took us 4 years of very hard work with the university. We have done a partnership with the University of Qadiyat. The dean is here with us, so I cannot thank him enough with the Professor Udra. So after 4 years, we've come up with 2 solutions. We're trying to patent 2 solutions. They are under patenting. Okay, then one of the benefits of the project is besides it's good for the plants, improving the yield, the taste. I tasted the tomato, it was very good, believe me, delicious. It used to be like the old tomato we used to eat like maybe 20 years ago, and it's not anymore in the market. And the other thing is, okay, beside the yield, the taste, the content of, the improved content of protein, vitamins, and so on, one of the most important things that I cannot highlight enough about this is it helps the plant resist to the water shortfall by 70%, which is very amazing. So with 70% less water, we can still grow the crops without any issues. The most important thing is this is an issue that we are facing in Morocco. It's a dry country, and we have not enough water. So second most important thing is salinity stress. Obviously, when you don't have enough water, automatically you have salinity on the soil. So it helps as well the plant to resist to this salinity water. Last point is obviously it helps the soil. Unfortunately, the chemical fertilizer we are using, we sort of killing the soil. So this fertilizer, it helps improve the life of microbial life in the soil. So I can go on and go on.
Thank you
I may not finish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shajiri. I actually love this panel because if you look at the different type of investors we have here, we have a truly, small kind of enterprise in Morocco with the innovation and the solutions that are now investing in adaptation priorities of the country. And we have a large international institutional investor. And when the government is thinking about financing options and strategies, they have to think about diversity and all of those different types of investors and financiers that can come in and invest through different methods. And so so thank you very much for that comment, and also the points that you noted about kind of how can the businesses be more aware about NDC priorities of countries, kind of priority projects of countries. I think there's a lot more work that we could do, and I think initiatives like the project checklist would help identify those priorities and projects and help disseminate that information to investors in large, both domestic and international. So Eric, I would like to turn to you next with kind of the same question. And it would be helpful to explain what an institutional investor is. I was explaining it to my mom and to my son, Nasser. I said, it's like, imagine, Mom, you have your pension, right? You don't need it right now. You have your savings. Nasser is 11 right now. He doesn't need his college funds. And they're being managed by the institutional investors like CDPQ. But then when Nasser needs to go to college, he needs the money back, right, with some interest. And when my mom retires, she needs her pension back. So we're thinking about this is a very long-term patient capital. It can wait for 15, 20 years for the return, but it needs to be returned. So that's how I understand an institute, because they have an obligations, and you hear fiduciary obligations. So maybe with that kind of context, Eric, if you could please provide how the institutional investors such as yourself looking at climate-related opportunities and some of the challenges that you see.
Sure. Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation for being here. Maybe before I begin, je veux juste remercier le leadership du Maroc dans le domaine du changement climatique. Avant de commencer à la CDPQ, j'ai été une diplomate canadienne pendant presque 15 ans et j'étais responsable pour le changement climatique à notre mission permanente auprès des Nations Unies à New York. Donc, je me souviens très bien le leadership du Maroc, surtout en 2016 avec la transition de la COP à Paris à la COP à Marrakech et le mettre en œuvre de Paris. Donc, je me souviens très bien de le rôle très important que le Maroc a joué dans cette époque-là. Donc, je veux me remercier à vos efforts. So to answer your question, absolutely. So Let me start with what you were saying about the fiduciary duty. This is absolutely correct. So in our case, CDPQ, we manage the pensions for roughly 6.8 million Quebecers out of a population of just over 8 million. So yes, people from the time they enter the workforce contribute, but they hope that in 40 years we can pay them back and support them in their later years, non-working years. But as you know, we also have a demographic issue in a lot of the North American jurisdictions where the population is becoming older and older, and there's fewer younger people to support that, right? So because of that, we've done a calculation, and it means we need roughly on average, and it will change a little bit, for every dollar that we have that we invest on their behalf, and it's not our money, it's theirs, we need to earn an average of about a 7% return, or else the fund will shrink and we'll run out of money eventually. Like, that's sort of the demographic reality we face. So that's at a high level, and that applies equally to whether we're investing in Montreal or Marrakesh, right? So that we have that constraint. Okay. So then what do we look at when we go beyond? Well, when we look at a country like, it could be Morocco, it could be Mexico, it could be Mauritania, it doesn't matter. At the first level, all the projects we look at the same way. Do they earn that return? Are the projects themselves well structured and quality? Is it something that we could invest in confidence for 10, 15, 20 years? Because as a pension fund, we don't like doing quick transactions all the time. Maybe we do that a little bit in public equities, but in private equity, in our infrastructure team, our real estate team, we like to invest in the long run. So we need to have that confidence that the project is going to be durable for that period of time. And then on top of that, when we look at emerging markets, there's additional considerations, right? First and foremost, there's the question of foreign currency risk, which is absolutely primordial. So foreign currency risk can impact, we estimate, up to between a third and a fourth of our expected returns in a given market. And so that's a huge consideration, almost as much as the overall recovery or default rates of a given investment. So that's a really important one. And then, of course, there's what I call the two other things, sorry. There's the scale. So because we're a large pension fund, so we have about 450 billion assets under management, we tend to want to have large ticket sizes, which means that usually we won't even look at something if it's not at least 100, 150 million. And even if it's that size, it better be an amazing project, just because the costs for us to do the due diligence are the same for a project of 5 million as is for 500 million. It's basically the same. So there's that scale challenge. And then there's the last challenge that I would say, that as we leave Quebec, as we leave Canada and the US, the markets we know, there's just the human nature of fear of the unknown. Like that's a reality. People are always much more comfortable in the area that they know, which is really sorry. So those are some of the challenges and considerations. So now let me look at the positive side. How do we overcome these? How have we overcome these? Because we have in a lot of instances. So one is the importance of partnerships, especially with actors who have long and extensive experience on the ground in those markets. Essentially, those people, beyond their technical skills, which are often very valuable, and whatever financing they bring to the table, they have something else. They're almost like a safety blanket, right? Because what every investor wants to know is, when something goes wrong, like, who can I pick up the phone and call and get help? Like, that is absolutely essential, right? Because we invest, and investing means there's always risk. Because if there's no risk, there's no return. And so there's no need to invest. We'll just all buy government bonds and go home, and we'll be out of jobs, right? So things always go wrong, no matter what. They go wrong in Montreal. They'll go wrong in Morocco. They'll go wrong in Azerbaijan. That's the reality. But knowing that if something is going wrong, you have a network, you have an ecosystem, you have a group of people who are familiar with the landscape, who have the connections and can help solve that. So that's, like, I can't stress enough how important that is, beyond sort of the financial engineering. Another issue to get around sort of some of the risks that I mentioned, the currency risk and sort of the unfamiliar risk, is we increasingly are looking to pool our capital into vehicles such as blended finance vehicles, because those do a couple of things. So a blended finance vehicle, one of the things it does is just on the purely project level, it can sort of adjust the risk-return equation a little bit to make something, on the marginal of bankable to fully bankable. And, even one notch on a credit assessment can mean all the difference. It can mean the difference between a project going to investment committee and never even going to investment committee in the first place. So those are important. But also the blended finance structures often provide a protection against foreign currency risk. That's a big part of it, as I mentioned. And what they allow us to do is also usually partner with an experienced asset manager or other experienced player that have that local familiarity or presence on the ground that can develop the pipeline of projects, right? Because that's the other problem. There's a sort of a missing gap somewhere, right? There's a lot of great projects like the one you just talked about that I would say are in the $500,000 to $5-10 million range. And then there's some, the government-sponsored, mega projects that are in the billions range. And then that middle part is where a lot of us institutional investors like to go. And that's often an orphan space. It's often missing. Excuse me. And so in that space, that's where having this ecosystem of partnerships, NDC partnerships and everyone else working together to find those projects, do that upstream project preparation and even pre-preparation mode, development and checklists, excuse me, and then bringing that to the investors at that point is so essential. So those are kind of the things that we look at. Before I wrap up, because I've been talking too long, I know, I do want to stress the importance of the NDCs in general. This is very key. And everyone should look at the NDCs as we lead to Belém next year as an opportunity, not just to present your plan for emissions reduction. Think of it as your investment strategy. That I can't score that enough. If all the countries come to Belém with detailed planned NDCs, with sectoral targets, priorities, information on how the enabling environment and government policies are going to support those, a roadmap of suggested projects and a financing map, that would be incredibly powerful. That would be so transformational, and that will get the private sector's attention. So maybe if this is the financing COP, and then Belém is the NDC COP, the COP after that can be the investment COP. Is there where we actually take the financing that we agree to here in the NCQG, take the NDCs that are presented in Belém, and then at COP31 we can, invest in them. That to me is the perfect sequence. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Because I think ideally we want NDCs to be a key rationale for all the investment decisions, whether it's a small company, bigger company, when they're planning their investment strategy for Morocco, they'll have to say, is it aligned with the NDCs? Because NDCs will become the economic blueprints for both climate action and sustainable development that will transform the economy of the country. So maybe... Yes, absolutely. I remember that. Riyad, given your extensive experience and also work on this initiative, would you please share some of your thoughts on the question of this is a big business opportunity, the challenges, and how do we overcome, and any other thoughts that you have?
Yes, thank you. Sorry for not being physically with you. I just left Baku yesterday, but I'm very happy to... Yes, to contribute to this very interesting debate. As you know, in Morocco and the MENA region, we're facing several significant challenges in accessing climate finance. Of course, one of the main issues is that projects are often presented in different formats, making it difficult for investors to compare and evaluate them effectively. We are also struggling with getting reliable data about projects, and financial institutions often can't provide sufficient guarantees. But we are seeing opportunities to overcome this barrier through tools like the NDC partnership checklist just presented before by Kirtika, which helps standardize how projects are presented. We are also seeing improved collaboration between public and private sectors, which is very essential for creating an environment where climate investments can thrive. The key is to develop regularly frameworks that encourage investments while maintaining appropriate safeguards. We're seeing exciting development in Morocco's investment landscape that can significantly boost climate finance. You maybe know that the new national investment charters provides a transformative framework that directly support climate-related investment through specific incentives and support mechanisms. When combined with the strategic role of the Mohammed VI Investment Fund, Morocco can now has two powerful instruments that catalyze climate investments. The charter provisions for green investments, coupled with the fund's ability to act as a co-investor and provide guarantees, creates an ecosystem for climate finance, for sure. This national framework is further enhanced by other mechanisms like the green bonds and blended finance solution and the finance provided by the private sector. What is particularly promising is how the investment charter and Mohammed VI Fund can work together to de-risk investments. The charter provides the regulatory framework and incentives, while the funds offers financial instruments and guarantees. And in the future, we should work with this fund to access better funds and that are tailored to the needs of the investor. The synergies between these national instruments demonstrates the Morocco commitment to create an enabling environment for climate investment. So this combination is a clear pathway for structuring climate projects, giving project developers a clear framework to work within. When we present the projects under the NDC partnership checklist, we can explicitly show how they align with both charters and the fund. That was one of the terms of reference of the projects, how we can align the projects with these two instruments to make them more attractive to both national and international investors. So the systematic approach provided by this instrument, combined with regular matchmaking events that we foresee to organize in the future, we can make a very create a robust environment for climate finance in Morocco. I think it's my point of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Riyad. Valuable comments. Now, you're mentioning kind of matchmaking exercise, right? We have undertaking this effort on the project checklist. I think the ticket size of projects about 500K. That's, I think, what Krikriti has mentioned. So, looking at this matchmaking exercise, just based on this project checklist, I think we're going to get kind of different responses from our investors here. But it would be useful to hear from you all, from what you heard about the project checklist, as we think about kind of successful matchmaking, based on this initiative, whether you think that this is something that, would really help with, I think you have identified, Mr. Shajiri, that it's important to raise awareness about this project, and that's what this initiative does. But is there anything else kind of in addition or supporting that project checklist effort could be done to attract kind of a small domestic private sector investors? And the same question then goes to Eric. Thank you. And yeah.
So I think this idea of, the NDC checklist is really, really useful. And what I would say is, for projects of that scale, I think you have to be very specific about your target, right? And so a $500,000 project, like you can't come to an institutional investor, but you can go to a blended finance vehicle, perhaps, that's pooling that money. So we know of some. We've talked about Gaia before. That's a very good one. But there's others. I know in our case, CDPQ, we've recently invested in the Brookfield Catalytic Transition Fund that's endowed with catalytic capital from the United Arab Emirates, from Altera, which is a great initiative from the last COP. There's many others. Blackfield has some. Singapore has announced a few billion through the Fast P process. So I think going to those funds, because you're getting the institutional capital, but you're getting it, in the second degree. Because as I said, if you come to write to my investment teams, they'll be like, we can't look at this. It's too small. But if you go to those funds, which have our capital, then I think you'll be able to do it. And this is one of the first things they'll want to look at. So the more homework you've done in advance, the much quicker it will be and the higher the success. So I strongly support these efforts. The last thing I'll say is making that direct link to the NDC as is presented next year would be like the coup de grace. That would be like the next level. So you take something that's already really good, and if you make it great, you can show the direct linkages to the NDC. Like, wow, that would be so powerful.
Yes, thank you so much, Eric. And I think for those of you who may not be familiar with kind of blended finance, just wanted to quickly explain. So what Eric was referring to, instead of looking at institutional investor coming in at the project level and investing, you create a blended finance fund that will have, for example, $1 billion in it, into which CDPQ, for example, would invest together with philanthropic investors, with some public sector investors that will take a little bit more risk. And then that fund takes that $1 billion and it invests in multiple projects in different countries, or maybe in multiple projects in one country. And I think this underscores the importance of countries shifting to programmatic approaches in defining their priorities, so that when they present their program to the investors, it comes with, as Eric has mentioned, kind of with that robust pipeline of projects, so that when investors are coming in, let's say at the blended finance level, they're looking at 10 projects in Morocco. Please, Eric.
That's such a key point, because whether it's with the institutional investors directly or with any of those funds, sure, you can get their attention with one project, but if you have 5, 10, 20, if you have a whole pipeline, like, you'll have their full attention. Like that I can't stress that more, which is why so many of the discussions here, even the NCQG text, there's so much talk about national platforms, regional platforms, and if you look at that, part of it is to bring policy coherence, of course, but part of it is to create that pipeline that can actually be financed. So this is absolutely a key point. Right. I'm glad you raised it.
And if I may add, and I know we're out of time, but very important point that we're trying to figure out. So when you assess whether the projects are commercially viable, instead of checking it for each project, you check it for a program. It's because a lot of issues are going to be the same question. So instead of group of investors going and looking, and government is now talking to 10 groups, it's one program, and a lot of the questions are going to be about enabling environment, about the off-taker, about the foreign exchange risk, about policy coherence, and it will apply to all of the projects because they're part of the same program. It's a similar projects, maybe in different countries, different cities. So we have to think, how can we do that pre-feasibility on the programmatic at scale so that it opens up then for the program. So with that, maybe if you could also, Mr. Shajiri, from the domestic private sector perspective, speak.
Yeah, maybe one last word to close this. Just regarding the checklist, it's very important to, obviously it's a very complex job, but one of the most important things I believe that maybe you guys need to take care of is the national discretions. National discretions, because every country has its specific issues. Then maybe in the checklist, per country, it should be maybe different. What checklist which apply to Morocco maybe won't apply to countries maybe in South Africa.
Yeah,
so this is
specific issues.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good.
The other thing is, okay, a checklist, it's good, and I believe maybe all different stakeholders that will take decisions based on this checklist, they need to together. So every one of them, they need to put all the information they need. So we won't waste too much time going back and forward with the finance parties.
Wonderful. Yes, Mohammed.
Just to echo what Mr. Shajiri just said, in this exercise, and Mr. Riyad can hear this, because we had to adapt the checklist to the context of Morocco. As he said, there are some vehicles, some internal regulations, and some other measures that the state has already taken to encourage investment. So when we got to the checklist, when Moroccans got the checklist, they had to do an exercise of adaptation of the checklist, and Riyadh brought all the information, and it was very useful to, as you said. Thank you.
Maybe if I could just
yes, please.
At one point, yeah, appreciate all the feedback. So that's been very helpful. Maybe one thing that we're trying to do is keep the funnel as wide as possible in terms of collecting the projects. So one thing, just to be clear, when we say 500,000, that's the lower limit, right? So we do expect that there will be some projects in there that are, a couple hundred million, maybe up to $1 billion even, but then there will be some that are small. And what we're trying to do is then filter those projects so that we're sharing the relevant projects with the relevant investors. But I think the upside is that there will be basically a deal book that has one-pagers for every single project, so that an investor can quickly look at 30 different projects, 40 different projects, and quickly say, okay, I'd like to connect with project 1, 15, and 20. And so we're being efficient in terms of keeping it wide, but then also having enough filters so we can quickly say, okay, we think this will be relevant for the institutions, but we'll also have some VCs in there. We'll also have some PE in there. And then we're really matching the right opportunity to the right investor. So that's a little bit of the thinking behind this. And on the country-specific tailoring, again, fully agreed. We made sure that this, particularly even the subsectors for NDC, right? So that's different in Morocco than it is in Nigeria or in Ghana. So we made sure the sectors are specific, and we're taking into account all of the great opportunities that the country is already providing. So we're not being redundant, but we're being additional to what already exists and really tailoring it to what the country has to offer. So, but yeah, very excited about all the feedback and working with everybody.
Thank you, Krikriti. So I think maybe we have just final 2 minutes. There's a question from the audience. If you could please quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, maybe it's not a question, but maybe let me first introduce myself. My name is Hatem Aznag. I am project analyst within the Union for the Mediterranean in charge of energy and climate action. So first of all, I want to thank NDC Partnership to open the door for collaboration, because by the end of the COP29, we are discussing the implementation or the collaboration between private sector and the public sector, and how we can do on-ground projects. I think this is how we can call to the action. That's the first point. The second, within the Union for the Mediterranean, we understand the importance and the critical role of private sector. That's why we have a business forum. And now we are trying to partner with the NDC partnership to bring this expertise to the Mediterranean and regional perspective, and how we can have this checklist for Mediterranean projects. I think that can be a challenge, but we will try to push for that through our platforms and with the support of, this is opportunity to thanks our colleague Mohammed for the opportunity and the push to create, because I feel there is some kind
Absolutely.
of gap to have that public-private partnership.
Yeah.
But I think the Mediterranean perspective is important, and we can capitalize on the experience of Morocco, other countries, how we can implement that and have a kind of sharing best practices. Thank you.
One more question, yes.
Okay, no, thank you. I think it's a good contribution, but my issue, and then maybe it's good that I raise it, is I will say on the skill within the country.
Yes.
When I say the skill, it depends on the generation. For example, I have my junior sister. She did a master in finance, and then when she speaks, I will say climate bond to me. For me, it sounds, so technical. Those who are doing financial engineering. And then I really laugh from the beginning when Madame the Director speak about, I would say, the human capacity.
Yes.
So different stakeholders, as you are supporting the different countries to move ahead with the transition, please think on the capacity building of the different actors. Because the private sector, or let's say the multilateral bank, they may attract the best skill that you have, leaving the country with the people that do not necessarily have a certain level of skill. And then we will have asymmetry of situation.
Absolutely.
Where it will be difficult to access the fund, you see. So for me, that is one point. And then the second point, I will be short. Don't worry, madam.
Yes.
I will be short. The second point is the research. Because I am a director of research for WRI Africa. So I'm coordinating the research for WRI in Africa, in all over the continent. And then I think that without knowledge, without new knowledge, without being able to generate knowledge that will inform the NDC process and then inform the finance process also, we may have some difficulties. So maybe I'm preaching for my own
No, it's
group,
it's an excellent
but
point.
it's
We
good
just
that,
came out of the capacity development program where we were discussing this thing.
So sorry for,
Thank you.
for...
Thank you. And I just want to really thank our speakers. I think there are 3 clear messages here that NDCs have to lead and have to drive investment decisions to transform the economies. Countries could think about it as their country strategy, but also as a regional strategy for some of the things that require regional approaches. I think that was a good point. We also have to really, I think, think about different types of investors that you're trying to attract, and also think about how to use our limited public sector resources, how to use our grant funding, and all of those things to mobilize private capital at scale for the project. And number 3, I think we need to build common language so we all understand, so we have a collective mindset, and that comes through joint capacity building, because there's a lot also private sector needs to learn from countries. So, and I think we need a lot more of that, continuous, meaningful, and impactful. So with that, I would like to say thank you to all of our participants, both speakers and the audience, and the government of Morocco for the great work that you do and the leadership. Thank you. And let's do a photo. Okay, thank you.